So it's time for today's breakfast bite on Pure 24/7 Radio, and I'm very pleased to welcome another guest from Torch Trust. It's Zoe. Hi, Zoe. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. It's great to see you again, and you brought us a great thought for a breakfast bite recently. What have you got for us today?
So today I thought I'd talk about a passage that we did in kids' church recently, which is the parable of the wise and foolish builders. So this is in a few different books in the Bible, but the one I've taken it out of is Matthew. So it's Matthew 7, verse 24 to 27. So it says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, and the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, and the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." So I really love this parable. I love that it's so widely spoken about in kids' church. But I feel like there's also so much more to it than just being able to sing the fun song or build a house out of spaghetti and marshmallows and shake to see if it'll stay standing. There's so much that you can take from it as an adult as well, really. So this was a parable that was a part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. It was the final part. So he'd already spoken about various things, such as, not very light things, but things like murder and eye for an eye, loving your enemies, things like that. So he'd spoken about these different things that you can do to help you live a good life. And then after that, he then shared this parable, which is basically starting off at least by saying that it's okay to know all these things, but without doing any action or putting them into practice, then nothing's really coming from it. Like, what fruit is there? There's none unless you're actually doing something with this knowledge. So I think the way that Jesus explained it in the form of a parable allows for so much more just depth of explanation, really, because it goes into what he truly means by saying put it into practice more than just saying it. But then he also goes into like what the outcomes are of having put it into practice and having not put it into practice. So he starts by talking of the wise man who built his house upon the rock. So the crowd listening, they'd be familiar with their surroundings, which would be quite rocky. And they would know that if you build a house, you're going to build it on the rock. So by doing that, they're giving their structure a strong and immovable foundation, which would mean amidst stormy weather that may come in the future, the house would be able to remain standing. So in that local area, they'd have streams that flow. And depending on the time of the year or the weather, the streams may have more or less water in them. If they have more water, they would then leave deposits at the sides of the banks because they would overflow their banks a bit. But then when it's warmer and the water is less, the deposits would have been left either side of the riverbank. If someone comes along at that point and thinks, oh, great, let's build a house here on this pre-prepared flat ground. It'll be easy to dig a foundation because it's not rocks, right by the river, perfect. If they do that, it might be great to begin with, but as soon as a storm comes, it's going to be down. The foundations aren't firm. They're not set into a stone or something strong enough to withstand the rain and the wind. And that's them just attempting to get an easy way of building a house. If you're not having to set a strong foundation, that's just them trying to use a quick way out, really. And everyone there would know that. They'd understand that side of the parable. So if we dig a little deeper, excuse the pun, we can look at then what that symbolizes. So it might be quite obvious, but the rock that can be thought of as being Jesus. So if we build our house, which is our life or our lifestyle, we build that on him, his teachings, then when storms come, we'll be able to stand strong because our foundations are in Jesus. If we put into action everything Jesus teaches us and what we read in the Bible, then when the storms come, we'll be able to stay standing. But if we build our life on the sand, which could be the world's teachings and temptations, and if we put our foundations there, then when those storms come, we'll fall. And I say when the storms come, because we know that storms will come. Jesus says in John 16, verse 33, that in the world we'll have troubles or tribulations, suffering, distress, afflictions, trials, depending on which version of the Bible you read. We know that no matter how much planning we may put into our life, things can come and feel like they knock us sideways, but we can know that if we've got our foundation set in Jesus, then when those trials come, we will be able to stand strong. And the deeper those foundations, the stronger we will be, as in building any house, the deeper the foundations, the stronger that structure is. So I feel like my challenge today in this passage and in this understanding is thinking about how strong your foundation is. Like, is your life set firm on Jesus? Is your foundation in with him and his teachings, the Bible? Or is it set in the world, in the world's temptations, the world's sometimes easier way of living and more immediate results from things rather than sticking to the long road that may not feel rewarding straight away, but in the end certainly is.
Yeah.
And what can you do to strengthen that foundation today? Like, what small thing can you do to start setting that foundation if it's not something that you've got strong already? Yeah, that's what I've got to share.
Brilliant. Yeah. And like you say, it is a very probably a well-known story, or I mean, many of
Mm,
us, but I mean, as you say, it's often taught in sort of Sunday school or to children. But as you say, as with anything Jesus said, there's so much depth in there. And I love
mhm,
how these parables allow us to comprehend it in a very much deeper way, as you put it, allows us to dig deep into the story, into what Jesus is saying. And in this case, I
mm,
mean, there's loads. You just touched on a little bit of it, the fact that Jesus is that rock. He's given us the building blocks. And as you
yeah.
say, it takes time. Yes, there are easier ways to build a foundation, quicker ways even, but generally speaking, short-term gain, long-term loss. And we've got to, yeah, it takes a lot of hard work to build a secure foundation, one that's actually going to last when we find ourselves um, with the storms of doubt and fear and
Mm,
frustration and disappointment. Without proper foundation, these things are just we're going to collapse under the pressure, aren't we?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. Thank you so much, Zoe. It's been a pleasure to see you as always, and I hope you have a
You too.
fantastic day.
Thank you so much. Same to you.